EC3 has had a very strange career path. He's well known for his top 1% gimmick, aka the I'm rich and better than you gimmick. Simple but effective. MJF uses it. Look at him. In the prime of his career, he's 24. And I'm doing this at 23. Oh no. Anyway, his promos and matches with Impact Wrestling are what made fans take notice of him, and he returned to the WWE with a lot of promise, but, well, stuff happened. Bad stuff. EC3 was a complete and utter failure in the WWE. Despite having all of the keys to success, he has a weird orange tan, he can cut a promo with the best of them, he's good in the ring, and look at his freaking muscles! So many bumps! Why did he fail so hard? EC3's story in WWE is filled with so many woulda, coulda, shouldas. He should have been the biggest heel on Raw or SmackDown. He should have been booked better in NXT. He could have had great feuds with the likes of Drew McIntyre, Randy Orton, Braun Strowman, etc. He should have been a multi-time world, IC, or tag team champion. He would have, but sadly, EC3 is the man who will be forever famous or infamous for this photo of him holding a red party cup like he had just regretted all of his life choices up to that point. Go back to WWE, they said. It'll totally be worth it, they said. Now, if it seems I'm just roasting the hell out of EC3, then please, I apologize. However, EC3 could have very well been a new and exciting top star on the main roster and a main eventer. But what went wrong with the WWE career of EC3 when he had all of the potential and the skill at his disposal? We start in NXT, the Derek Bateman years of 2010. Before he was EC3, he had curly hair, a surfer doofus gimmick only Matt Riddle could pull off, and was part of the worst game show in WWE history. He was not popular, he was not all that charismatic with the fans, and he was only used as jobber to the stars on Raw, SmackDown, and the newly rebranded NXT we all know and love today. Bateman was released from his contract in 2013 with very little fanfare and moved on to Impact Wrestling. This is where it gets good. Shortly after his release, the former Derek Bateman would debut at Bound for Glory in October 2013 as TNA owner Dixie Carter's rich and spoiled nephew, Ethan Carter III, aka EC3. Though he stumbled a little due to his limited in-ring skills and wooden mic skills, EC3 grew over time into the superstar he was always meant to be. As one of the poster boys for the evil Team Dixie stable, he gained a winning streak over the likes of some jobbers, established stars. His mic skills would later on improve, as would his in-ring skills, and EC3 would later align himself with comedic cruiserweight Rockstar Spud, aka Drake Maverick, and feud with the likes of Sting, Bully Ray, Lashley, and even Rockstar Spud. After 2 crazy years of character and in-ring development, EC3 would finally win the TNA World title in June 2015 against the champion Kurt Angle, in a great match that showed his growth as a main eventer. EC3 would go on to have the best heel run of his life as TNA World Champion, aligning himself with the new bodyguard, Tyrus, feuding with the Hardys, Mr. Ken Anderson, and Mr. Drew McIntyre-Galloway. He would even defend the title 3 times in the same night against a bunch of jobbers, and that's awesome! God, he was great. Also, please watch any of his promos during his first world title run in Impact. They are amazing. EC3 would receive a fired briefcase in the Feast or Fired match, in which he was released from his Impact contract in January of 2018. EC3 had arrived in TNA in 2013 as a complete nobody who was randomly made to be Dixie Carter's little groomed doggy nephew, and then he left nearly 5 years later as one of the hottest and most successful acts in the company. A true success story. A 2-time world champion and Impact Grand Slam champion, a worthy opponent for so many main event level stars, a powerful voice with an improved moveset, and of course, a dope-ass theme song and gimmick. EC3 was finally ready for the big leagues. A few weeks after his TNA release went public, EC3 would make his return to WWE under the NXT brand, showing up in a nice suit and posing to the screaming fans at NXT TakeOver Philadelphia. EC3 was raring to go, and the fans were beyond happy to see him make an impact. No pun intended. Well, maybe. He was going to soar as one of NXT's top guys. He was going to be a future main eventer, a future NXT champion, in the best brand in WWE. But no, he wasn't. Now, to be fair, EC3 had the honor of being a part of the star-studded inaugural NXT North American Championship ladder match at TakeOver New Orleans. Whew, that's a mouthful. Watch the whole show, please. It's really great. Alongside Lars Sullivan, Velveteen Dream, Killian Dane, the debuting Ricochet, and Adam Cole, baby. Though he didn't win, EC3 had a great showing, and that's fine. He didn't have to be the, centerpiece. Adam Cole and Ricochet were crowd favorites, as well as Dream and Dane. Also, Lars Sullivan was there too, I guess. It was a lot to take in for EC3's first takeover, but that's fine. There will be plenty more times for him to shine. But then he started to lose. A lot. For some insane reason, one of the hottest new signings to NXT, EC3 flopped so hard, and it's so sad. Even though he was great on the mic and in the ring, NXT never used him in a big capacity after New Orleans. He lost convincingly to the Velveteen Dream at TakeOver Brooklyn, he lost a short feud to Lars Sullivan, why? And then the last match he had before joining the main roster was losing a rather good match to Adam Cole, and that's it. He won against jobbers but lost against established talent. For the life of me, I will never understand why EC3 couldn't win big matches. He didn't have to win all of them. Just one? Just one. Please? He also suffered a concussion during his match with Dream, which halted his momentum a little bit, but that still shouldn't be enough to derail his career entirely. Regardless, fans slowly turned away from EC3 and started focusing on other established stars like DIY, The Undisputed Era, Ricochet, Aleister Black, and EC3 was sort of lost in the shuffle. But don't worry, the worst was yet to come, because misery loves company, especially on the main roster. After a year of nothing of importance for the two-time world champion, and a strange promo where Triple H and the McMahons came out and gave some vague, empty promise about the fans being the authority due to failing ratings, I don't know. It was bad. Vince thought of an idea. Why not call a bunch of NXT guys up and watch the ratings go up? So EC3 was called up to be on the main roster along with several other NXT favorites, despite the fact he never won any big matches or had any memorable feuds with anyone. Doesn't matter, they'll cheer for anyone from NXT, right? EC3 made his air quotes debut on February 4th, 2019 on Raw, a day that will live in infamy, where he began his career as a guest on the worst talk show segment in WWE, A Moment of Bliss. So in these cringe-worthy minutes, which felt like my entire life, Alexa Bliss flirted with the sentient orange tan known as EC3, and then Dean Ambrose and Nia Jax came out because they were feuding for some reason. I don't know, and I don't care. Now it's making me sad. While they were arguing about something, EC3 tried to get a word in, but he never said anything. He was just sitting there in the little white chair in his wrestling gear and trying to get a word in, and he kept getting cut off every time. Like, was that supposed to be funny? It's not funny. Seriously, why did they do this? He can wrestle. He can talk. Look at his muscles, Vince. Why are you doing this to him? What is he doing wrong? And so EC3's death certificate as a superstar was just signed right there. He never recovered. Months upon months of nothing matches against lower mid-carders and weird backstage segments of him posing in a mirror and holding that infamous red party cup. He had one pay-per-view match on the main roster. One! And it was a nothing 51-man battle royal at Super Showdown, where he was the first man eliminated. He was taken off TV entirely due to a concussion in November. His last TV match was a tag team loss with Eric Young, where they lost the Lucha House Party. on Main Event, the D Show. But hey, he won the 24/7 title 4 times. 2020 wasn't really better for him either. Little Ethan was fired from the WWE along with a bunch of others on the infamous Black Wednesday in April, where Vince wanted to save some money by making some necessary budget cuts even though they were making more money than ever before, meaning they never had to fire anyone, especially during a pandemic. I don't like WWE sometimes. Silver lining, EC3 is going through another career resurgence right now, with him embracing a more darker and cryptic side of himself with his control your narrative / free EC3 gimmick that he showed on Impact and now Ring of Honor, where he works to this day. And okay, well, I'm glad he's basically free from the system of WWE. But anyway, EC3 was at the top of the world once upon a time, a world champion and a hot prospect on the indie scene, and he was made into an absolute joke in just 2 years. Say it with me now, EC3 deserved better. So first off, as a very funny and great storyteller named Adam Blampier once said, wrestling isn't that hard. Wrestling isn't that hard. I'm looking at the narrative aspects at my disposal and trying to make something out of it. However, since WWE operates under the watch of a crazy old man who can't even notice a talented star he could build up as a main eventer when it's right in front of his freaking face, I'm taking control of the narrative. Are you happy, EC3? So basically, EC3's career is plagued with the most momentum-crushing booking imaginable. EC3's Impact booking was brilliant and served as a template for a true main eventer when he returned for the WWE. But the company and NXT never really saw EC3 as anything more than just him being there. He wasn't special because we had so many other special people in NXT. I disagree. EC3 was more than special. He was something so much more. So we need to basically book him better in NXT and on the main roster. We start in NXT with his return in 2018. And this story will end at SummerSlam 2020, where hopefully EC3 will be built up as a credible main eventer and a new star. To begin, and sorry Adam Cole fans, but EC3 wins the ladder match at TakeOver Philadelphia and becomes the first ever NXT North American champion by locking Adam Cole in the ladder rung. The title win establishes EC3 as a superstar who is smart, resourceful, and a total heel who will do whatever it takes to win. Being an inaugural champion will definitely put you in the history books, for better or worse. And don't worry about Adam Cole. EC3 has some good defenses against Lars Sullivan, Pete Dunne, and Oney Lorcan as NXT North American champion. But then, Adam Cole wins a #1 contenders match for the North American title a few weeks before TakeOver Brooklyn. So, Adam Cole pins EC3 after a great heel versus heel match to win the North American title, thanks to help from the Undisputed Era. After an unsuccessful rematch the next week, EC3 is taunted by his title loss by the Velveteen Dream, who is on a win streak of his own at this time, and their match is set at TakeOver Brooklyn 4. The concussion still happens, as it does in real life. However, EC3's momentum will not stay down for long. Meanwhile, Ricochet wins a #1 contenders match to advance to TakeOver Brooklyn 4 to take on Adam Cole like in real life. And then EC3 wins his match with the Velveteen Dream to keep his momentum going. So EC3 has a few small and notable good matches against the likes of Aleister Black, Pete Dunne, and pursuing the NXT title. And even having a really great title match against Tommaso Ciampa on NXT TV after winning a #1 contenders match. But of course he fails in the end, and that leads to Ciampa facing Velveteen Dream at TakeOver Phoenix. After a few more wins and losses, EC3's full year in NXT comes to an end, having proved himself a respectable title contender and a strong microphone master as he prepares for his debut on Monday Night Raw. And this is where the fun begins. First off, EC3's debut was all wrong. So none of this a moment of bliss or Dean Ambrose nonsense, okay? EC3 is meant to be a new, hot, rising star that Vince called up alongside a handful of other NXT talent to boost ratings and fan interest. You are introducing this two-time Impact World Champion and the first ever NXT North American Champion, all caps, to the casual audience. Make EC3 a huge deal through some classy, well-produced vignettes leading up to the Royal Rumble, and then have him debut in the Royal Rumble. The fans of Phoenix, Arizona will definitely be wise to the great work he did in NXT because they popped for Pete Dunne and Johnny Gargano in the Royal Rumble that year, so why couldn't they do it for EC3? So EC3 enters the Royal Rumble, and he stays in there for a little while and gets even a huge EC3 chant going from the crowd before he's eliminated by Pete Dunne. But this is only the beginning for little Ethan, because EC3 is about to reunite with the familiar face from Impact Wrestling, the man he beat to become the world champion in that brand, Kurt Angle. So Kurt Angle was going on his farewell tour, having good matches like Ric Flair's final days in WWE, and feuding with the worst version of Baron Corbin, as he was playing the gimmick of a bald suit wearing jerkface who was basically making Raw legitimately unwatchable in 2018 and 2019. I'm serious. In my story, they are still feuding going into WrestleMania. But that's where EC3 comes in. So on the February 4th, 2019 episode of Raw, Baron Corbin cuts a promo, running down his great accomplishments as a wrestler and saying he was going to put Kurt Angle out to pasture like the old dog he is. Kurt Angle comes out, cuts a strong, passionate promo on his career, and how at WrestleMania 35, he's going to retire by making Corbin tap. Corbin just nods and says, "You're on." Leaves the ring, but then stops at the entrance ramp and says, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, I never said I would fight you. I've got bigger plans at WrestleMania than basically put an old man like you down. I've actually had the perfect opponent for you, the man who will retire you at WrestleMania." Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the first ever NXT North American Champion, the newest, fastest rising star on Monday Night Raw, EC3. EC3 comes out in a suit and says to a shocked Kurt Angle, "Remember me, Kurt? Don't worry, because at WrestleMania, I'll make sure no one remembers you. I'll see you soon, old man." That's right, EC3 versus Kurt Angle, Angle's final match at WrestleMania. Because honestly, I don't want Corbin to touch Kurt at all. I don't want him to have that horrible, horrible match at WrestleMania. And sorry, John Cena fans, I just think this is probably the best alternative we have. And I would put Corbin in the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, where he can get munched by Braun Strowman, who Corbin is still feuding with at this time. As for EC3, this is the perfect rematch, because both men have worked a great match before in Impact Wrestling, and the victory at WrestleMania would literally give so much momentum to EC3. Retiring a legend is definitely a good way to put a new star on the map. At WrestleMania, EC3, accompanied by a hurt Baron Corbin after losing the Battle Royal to Braun Strowman, has a serviceable good match against Kurt Angle, with both men going back and forth, and EC3 winning clean as a whistle with the top 1% finisher. What a heel, what a star. EC3 has retired Kurt Angle in his debut match at WrestleMania. Now let the rise of EC3 begin. After WrestleMania, EC3 turns on Baron Corbin and allies himself with Drake Maverick, ending his partnership with AOP on Raw. So the goal of this story is basically to build EC3's character. Since he's only been on the main roster for a month, we still need to make sure the fans know who he is as a true top 1% jerkface / main eventer. We give EC3 a slow and steady push to the top and protect him with a winning streak. Also, since EC3 is one of the best on the mic, and this is my personal opinion, I would have him sit as a guest commentator and act as a talent scout of sorts. EC3 is a businessman. He's a businessman type of wrestler who sees his victories as a way to establish himself as a ratings draw and make himself look great. Basically, EC3 gives commentary watching some established baby faces and approaches said baby faces later backstage, gives them a business card after some conversation, and says, with a wink, "We'll be in touch." That's his catchphrase in WWE. I think it's classy. And basically that's how he starts his feuds. Watch their match on commentary, hands them a business card if he's impressed with what he's seen, and they have a pretty good feud. EC3's brand grows alongside his scrappy little hilarious manager and punching bag Drake Maverick, whose antics of being EC3's mini-me and feuding with R-Truth for the 24/7 title will hopefully make Maverick a fan favorite with the crowd, even more than he was in 2019. I love Drake Maverick. So EC3 grows his little recruitment agency stable, which he calls Exclusive, or exclusive with the $sign, because he's rich. He recruits NXT's Riddick Moss as the tag partner and semifinal boss for other babyfaces to fight whenever EC3 is just not in the mood. He later recruits Lars Sullivan as hired muscle, but he does go down with a knee injury in June after Super Showdown, like in real life. And so they replace him with Luke Harper. Now, I know Luke Harper was not a happy camper during this time in WWE, and he did not want to be another heavy for a stable. He was supposed to be a bodyguard for Sami Zayn after WrestleMania, when those plans were scrapped, and he basically lost his patience with the company. And so, with my story, I want to send out Luke Harper the right way. If there's no way to stop him from leaving, I want to give him something, a memorable angle where at least he was treated with like a sliver of respect. A little bit of respect. Is that too hard to ask? So hopefully this will bring Harper back to relevancy with his new suit-wearing intelligent monster gimmick, Mr. Luke Harper, aka his Mr. Brody Lee gimmick from AEW, but he's basically just called Mr. Luke Harper. This new gimmick works because EC3 allows Harper to have his own feuds and matches while still being a part of Exclusive. Harper can cut his own articulate promos while eating steak and having, quiet little meetups and parties with the rest of Exclusive. And he can destroy opponents with ease and still look amazing in the ring. And hopefully this will convince Harper to stay a little bit before signing with AEW. Please. From April to July, EC3 and Exclusive enter into feuds with Ricochet, Rey Mysterio, and Humberto Carrillo, and he wins all of them. EC3 even has a roll-up win over an injured Seth Rollins during his Universal title feud with Brock Lesnar. EC3, Maverick, Harper, and Moss run wild on Raw, having good matches, while EC3 runs the singles division. Harper and Moss work as sort of an odd couple tag team, with Riddick Moss as the party dude businessman and Luke Harper as the strong, silent monster businessman. And EC3 is the businessman who brings the laughs and action on 205 Live and with the 24/7 title. It works. And during the build to SummerSlam, which unfortunately ties into the stupid wild card rule that I'm actually keeping for the story, because if you use the wild card rule right and not confusingly, it can actually work. This way, the wild card rule leads us to an interbrand match between Raw's EC3 versus SmackDown's Randy Orton. Now I know Kofi Kingston and Randy Orton have a match for SummerSlam, and the feud was really good and really satisfying to see Kofi win it. But their SummerSlam match ended in a flat double countout, and Kofi deserves better than that. So we're gonna have Kofi Kingston defend his title against Mustafa Ali. And I love Kofi so much. He's like literally one of my top 3 favorites. He's one of the reasons I got into wrestling, but Ali has to win the title. He has to become WWE champion just once. And later he can drop it to Brock Lesnar at the Fox premiere on SmackDown in a 10-minute match, not an 8-second squash, please. And Kofi still continues his world title pursuits, and the feud with Randy Orton is basically brought about because Kofi couldn't keep a hold of his title, and Randy Orton is just a total dick about it. So yeah, And Kofi wins the feud at TLC, just saying. But ultimately goes back to the tag division with the New Day, and that's fine. The wildcard rule only exists during this year, and that's it. Now back to EC3. EC3 and Exclusive start to attack Randy Orton's closest allies in the company, aka Evolution. The likes of Triple H, Ric Flair, why not, and Batista, who shows up backstage to address his retirement and life after wrestling. They destroy Batista, which prompts Orton to basically have his snake eyes locked onto Ethan Carter III. The following weeks, EC3 and Orton trade promos on Raw and SmackDown, with Ethan explaining his actions on Evolution. EC3 has beaten so many of Raw's newest stars, and now he's looking to the living legends of WWE. EC3 labels people like Randy Orton poison to the WWE, as they only show up to crush the dreams of the young and hopeful, like him. But now things have changed. EC3's running the show now. He's got a mega stable like Triple H, and he's starting his own little legend killer streak against the likes of Angle, Triple H, Flair, Batista, and you're next, Randall Keith. You're next. Orton on SmackDown basically tears apart EC3 as a basically complete nobody who just showed up out of nowhere, and he's the only one who comes out of nowhere. But basically Orton promises to punt every single one of his friends' heads off in the following weeks. So, why don't you worry about that, Ethan? So Maverick and Moss are basically taken out and put on the shelf. Little Ethan is very upset about his mini-me and one of his bodyguards being sent away to the shelf, so he sicks Luke Harper on Orton for the go-home Raw before SummerSlam. Orton's about to punt Harper in the closing set of the match, but EC3 attacks Orton with a chair, and Harper puts Orton through the announce table to end the segment. EC3 vs. Randy Orton opens the show at SummerSlam, sorry Becky and Natalya, with the two men going 20 minutes, and EC3 getting the win thanks to a little interference from Luke Harper. EC3 celebrates like he won on his own, and Harper seems a bit annoyed that his leader is taking all the credit. A few weeks after SummerSlam, EC3 continues his win streak by having matches against promising rookies from NXT. All the while, EC3 is getting a little drunk with power, as he's no longer facing any more top baby faces anymore, for basically 2 months. Basically, it's just him having jobber squash matches, and then him having parties with his friends in Exclusive, hanging out in the skyboxes as Drake Maverick and Luke Harper play bouncers for EC3 and his bro Riddick. There are funny segments of Exclusive enjoying fine dining at fancy restaurants and picking up girls, while basically, EC3, Maverick, and Moss are having the time of their lives, thinking they're gods among superheroes. Luke Harper is getting more visibly angry and frustrated week after week. During the build to Survivor Series, instead of Randy Orton being added to Team Raw, EC3 fills the spot instead. However, still high off his SummerSlam win against Orton, EC3's living his best life as the most rich and powerful man on the roster, and he knows he's going to lead his Raw team to victory. And so, he celebrates his win streak with a huge fake ratings chart and giant photos of a hurt Kurt Angle, Ricochet, Rey Mysterio, and Randy Orton. That proves EC3 is best for business, and Maverick and Moss are just laughing it up with their good buddy. Finally, Luke Harper can't stand it no more. He grabs the mic from EC3 and starts airing all of his grievances these past few months. Harper says he's disgusted at all 3 of these men for behaving so carelessly, and that EC3 would have never been successful on Raw if it weren't for him and his doofus friends. Before Harper can finish his promo though, EC3 slaps Harper right in the face, screaming, "How dare you! I run this business! I own you! I own everything! You were nothing before me. Nothing but a Demolition and Axe ripoff before I reached down and groomed you into the success you are today. I'm the best damn thing going in this company, and if you can't realize that, well, go ahead. Walk away. Go back to obscurity for all I care. I'll be the one laughing at you from the skybox." Luke Harper just shakes his head and walks away from Exclusive. EC3 just yells, "You just signed your own death warrant, Harper. We'll be in touch." And so, EC3 goes into the Survivor Series elimination match without his big heavy, but still has Maverick and Moss to keep him warm at night. In the match at Survivor Series, EC3 is about to eliminate Matt Riddle from the match. Maverick and Moss are taken out by a babyface Luke Harper, who throws Maverick right into Moss like a frisbee and then smashes them both through the barricade. EC3 sees this all happening outside the ring, and he attempts to go after his former muscle before Matt Riddle sneaks in a roll-up to end EC3's win streak after 8 months of protected booking. EC3 just lays there, eyes bugging out of his head. EC3's pleading with referees, please, that didn't count, that doesn't count, that doesn't count! And so he's just having a tantrum and finally just relents and leaves the match, but not before eating a whopper of a super kick from Harper and being helped up by officials later on. Bad night for little Ethan. So the next night on Raw, EC3 is trashing his locker room and storming into the ring. EC3 calls what happened at Survivor Series a travesty to the top 1%'s perfect record on the main roster. Though Riddle pinned him, and he'll get to him later, Harper is the true villain in Ethan's mind. He makes up all the excuses of why Harper attacking his best friends at ringside distracted him and basically allowed Matt Riddle to capitalize, and to him that doesn't count because he wasn't pinned fairly. However, Luke Harper then applauds EC3 from Exclusive's own Skybox and cuts a promo on his former friend saying, "Who's laughing now, Ethan? Don't worry, you'll have your chance at revenge soon enough once I beat you in the ring fair and square. Tonight, then I'll finally be rid of you." EC3 simply says, "You're on, Harper. You'll face Riddick Moss." And with a sly smile, EC3 says this is still his show, and he decides when and where he will face Harper. Harper beats Moss later that night, and EC3 later announces that he will fight Harper at TLC in a tables match with Drake Maverick as the special guest referee. During the build-up, it's actually really interesting because Drake Maverick and Riddick Moss are actually showing signs of dissension within Exclusive. They show signs of betraying EC3 because EC3's acting more tyrannical and paranoid toward them, and that how he can't accept defeat. Riddick Moss goes as far as to even shove EC3 down after losing his match to Humberto Carrillo. The Go Home Raw shows EC3 verbally pimp-slapping his team members for questioning his authority, and Luke Harper is just loving this. And Harper actually comes down to the ring and convinces Maverick and Moss to finally just walk away and be their own men. However, it's a trap! As Maverick walks away from EC3 and Riddick Moss is bro-hugging with Harper, Maverick, from behind, cracks Harper in the back with a steel chair, and EC3 and Moss kick the crap out of him. It was all a clever ruse to make Harper drop his guard before the pay-per-view. The members of Exclusive slam Harper through a hard table and stand above Harper's unconscious body to end the segment. So the match at TLC is a brutal affair, with EC3's sadistic and darker side showing, as well as Luke Harper's. And the finish comes when Harper is perched on top of a ladder, ready to splash onto EC3 onto a table, until Maverick gets Riddick Moss to try to push Harper off the ladder. However, Harper sees the attack coming and pounces onto Moss off of the ladder. So EC3 recovers, but not fast enough to take a huge Falcon Arrow through a table by Harper for the big win. Despite EC3's loss and salty attitude, EC3 gives him a huge amount of respect. The next night on Raw, EC3 raises Harper's hand to acknowledge him as a true contender. And so, Luke Harper can either sit out the rest of his contract or work regular matches on his own before he goes off to AEW to become Mr. Brody Lee, the Exalted One. Meanwhile, EC3 has had a pretty much near perfect year in 2019. great feuds, great programs, but he needs a little bit of gold around that waist of his. And he's looking to expand his brand in 2020 and campaign to become a champion. And that road starts when he feuds with Cedric Alexander. Cedric Alexander, like in real life, has had a pretty abysmal 2019, losing a lot of big matches to the likes of AJ Styles and the OC for the United States title, and generally be being wasted. However, in my version of the story, Cedric cuts a passionate promo backstage to start off the year right. He goes over his failures and promises things will be different going into 2020, because this time, he will not stumble, he will not rest until he is United States champion, no matter the obstacles. And now Cedric begins wrestling a little bit more aggressive, more fast-paced than before as January flies by. So much so that his newfound attitude catches the eye of Exclusive. EC3 sits in as guest commentator, as always, during Cedric's matches, and saying to the commentators, he's seeing a lot of potential in Cedric that he hasn't seen before, and he's admiring his goal of being a champion by any means necessary. EC3 and his friends approach Cedric backstage after a hard-fought victory, and EC3 says, "I truly admire your drive, Cedric. Not many rookies can back up what they've been promised in this company. Last year, I was building myself up as a main eventer on this show by facing the best of the best. But now I think it's time I tried a new approach. I need a protege, an apprentice, to carry on my great legacy." EC3 offers Cedric the card with a wink and a "will be in touch" as usual. The next week, Cedric answers EC3's offer to join Exclusive by ripping up the card and basically drop-kicking him in the face. And luckily, Cedric gets away from Maverick and Moss, and EC3 looks very furious as he watches Cedric escape. And now we move into the Royal Rumble. But remember, no one says no to little Ethan. Now the Royal Rumble match plays out like in real life. Brock Lesnar's number 1 and still WWE champion after defeating Ali, not Kofi, for the title. And after Lesnar is eliminated, Cedric makes his way down the ring, followed by EC3 later on. And as EC3 is making an example of everyone in the ring, he picks up Cedric, hurts him a little, and attempts to throw him out. But Cedric, with a snap Hurricane Rana, eliminates EC3. Another loss in the column. And little Ethan is once again a tiny bit upset. He pulls Cedric out of the ring. The next entrant, Riddick Moss, comes out to the ring. They basically both pummel Cedric outside of the ring. EC3 orders Riddick to eliminate Cedric, which he does, pulling him back in the ring and hurling him outside the ring, and prompting EC3 to basically just pull Cedric close after being eliminated, saying, "You're not better than me! No one is! You'll never beat me!" EC3 and Cedric continue their feud going into Elimination Chamber as they fight one-on-one, and Ethan wins this match after a ref distraction allows him to introduce the Millionaire Brass Knuckles, which allows him to sucker punch Cedric while the refs turn around, getting him the pin. But don't worry, WrestleMania is just around the corner. So after sucker punching Cedric's momentum, both Cedric and EC3 are placed into the special 8-man ladder match at WrestleMania for the United States title. Because why not? To be honest, who doesn't love a multi-man ladder match to kick off WrestleMania? I know I do! In this way, Cedric and EC3 both want the United States title and both have something to prove to the other. Cedric wants to prove to EC3 and the critics wrong by basically becoming a champion, and EC3 just wants to crush the dreams of the baby faces like Cedric. This ladder match also features the champion Andrade, Angel Garza, Rey Mysterio, Humberto Carrillo, Ricochet, and Aleister Black. After winning qualifying matches on Raw, the ladder match opens up WrestleMania 36, and there are spots aplenty. All the drama is about Cedric and EC3 doing all they can to reach the title. EC3 and Cedric are the last men standing on the top of the ladder, and Cedric manages to drop kick EC3 off of the ladder and himself off the ladder in a huge spot. Cedric manages to crawl up the ladder with every ounce of strength and finally manages to grab the title, much to his excitement and to EC3's despair and disbelief. Cedric proved his critics and EC3 wrong and wins his first US title. Hooray! As my fantasy booking starts to come to a close, EC3 is playing these same old excuses, song and dance, about how Cedric never pinned or submitted him. He just climbed a ladder and stole the title away from me. And he demands a match with Cedric for the United States title. But Andrade still wants his belt back after losing it. That makes sense. So, EC3, Cedric, and Andrade have a triple threat match on Raw. But Cedric still retains by pinning EC3 and will hold the title until he drops it to Apollo Crews in the summer. So, EC3 is a bit upset, and he needs to find a championship to capture, any championship to capture, just to make him feel better. And Money in the Bank is just around the corner. So, Money in the Bank has the same cinematic format, climb the corporate ladder and all that, and EC3 takes Otis's spot because why was Otis even in the match to begin with? I'll never know. So after some cunning and comedic tactics by him and Drake Maverick, EC3 climbs the corporate ladder and wins the Money in the Bank briefcase. EC3 tricks out the briefcase with his own personal logo and a golden shine of paint. And since there are some early NXT call-ups happening around this time, Matt Riddle is drafted onto Raw instead of SmackDown in the summer. Since he was responsible for EC3's first ever main roster loss, it's a pretty simple story to tell. So EC3 and Matt Riddle have a pretty fun feud over the summer, and the two trade victories back and forth going into SummerSlam. Now it's important to note, Drew McIntyre is still WWE Champion after beating Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania, and he is feuding with Randy Orton going into SummerSlam. So, with that being said, EC3 has a match at SummerSlam with Matt Riddle, and it's for the Money in the Bank briefcase. Yep, he's putting it on the line. And EC3 wins cleanly without help from his buddies this time. But then later on that night, it happens. After a grueling matchup against Orton, Drew McIntyre wins by the skin of his teeth to retain the title. But as Drew is celebrating in the ring, from behind with a chair, it's Riddick Moss, followed by Drake Maverick with a kendo stick. They both beat McIntyre and Orton like animals, and EC3 comes out with his briefcase and yells to the ref and Mike Rome, the announcer, that he is cashing in. After a TKO, or top 1% finisher, EC3 pins McIntyre to become the new WWE Champion. Finally, after a year and a half of good to great feuds, character development, and protected booking, EC3 is finally the star he was always meant to be in WWE. So, what happens next? EC3 can hold the title up until Survivor Series and drop it back to Drew, or he can hold it until the Royal Rumble, or better yet, main event WrestleMania with the title. And maybe have a new contender like Ricochet winning the Royal Rumble and going on to face EC3 for the title in the main event. Or, this is another cool dream match, have him defend the title against John Cena. But, in the end, that is how I would book EC3's main roster run. He can push new talent and basically raise his own stock by winning more world titles, the Intercontinental title a few times, and maybe even the tag belts. And yeah, I think that's a good way to end it. So, do you guys disagree? Did I do EC3 right? Let me know in the comments, and I will see you all in the next booking video. I'm Maverick Storm, the King of Wrestling, and I hope you have a blessed day. Thank you for watching.